Hi guys, welcome back to Ep.2. Once again, it's Connor.
Joe.
It's Tom.
Hey.
Now, Tom's an estate agent in the local area. We wanted to get him on to talk more about property, but I reckon, Tom, let's go back to where you started and have an intro.
Yeah, fine. So I've been coming up to nearly a decade working in an estate agency. I started when I was 17 as an apprentice negotiator, what feels like many years ago now. Career to date, I'm circa around £350 million in property sales so far. And that's sort of where I'm up to at the moment, I guess.
So what made you get into estate agency?
So it's probably one of the cheesiest ways ever that someone has got into any sales job or any estate agency job. However, back in 2014, there was quite a famous film came out in the cinemas called The Wolf of Wall Street.
Oh, yeah.
We all know it.
Yeah.
We all know it. Great film. And at the time I was only 16, so technically couldn't go actually in to go and watch the film, but snuck into the cinema to go and watch this film.
Yeah.
And I came out and I was determined to become a stockbroker.
Okay.
However,
What part was it? Was it the midget part? Like throwing the midget?
that was it. Well, I saw Joey once. So I was like,
That's why he's here, man.
I was like, oh shit.
it's coming.
Before we go a bit further, pull your chair forward a bit.
Yeah.
And then
Just a little
just
disclaimer.
speak into it a bit more.
Know a lot about property, so it'll be like a learning curve for me.
That's all right. Right, so we're talking Wolf of Wall Street. We're chucking midgets off tables at dartboards and shit. So.
Yeah. But what I realised is that to do that job, you have to go to university, become a stockbroker, and I didn't have the mental capacity to be able to do that. So this was halfway through my A-levels. So instead I looked at doing apprenticeships in car sales, but no one would employ me because I couldn't drive.
Really?
So 16, no driving licence, wouldn't employ me. So on the 31st of March 2014, the day before my 17th birthday, I had an interview with an estate agency to become an apprentice negotiator.
Yeah.
Got offered the job, and then I started after my last exam in the AS levels at school.
Yeah, see, because I can remember this, because Tom, I think you were in my business class.
Yes.
And I can remember sort of being in this business class thinking, what the fuck am I doing here? Like, this is so shit.
What did you actually learn?
Nothing. I can't remember if I...
Some of us did. Let's just...
Tom might have, but I didn't learn anything.
Some of us that paid attention learned some things.
But I can remember Tom sort of halfway through the year sort of thinking,
disappeared.
Basically disappeared. And I was like, shit, I want to disappear. How does somebody disappear like that?
I used to see Tom in a suit walking around town all the time.
On my way to court, yeah.
Yeah, that's one thing I wanted to touch on actually. Tom, you dress real well.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Like,
Thanks.
I know you're in a Lakers flat peak or hat today.
Going casual
some of
Sundays.
those suits you wear are nice, man.
Yeah. So that's what started the career, which is getting into it that way, and then just progressed from that point until nearly a decade on now. So, but it is probably the cheesiest way to get into a sales job.
I feel like a lot of times people get into stuff that way. They sort of see something that's like so glorified, and they're like, I just want to do that, and then they think, hang on a minute, I got a kick in the nuts here. Like, that's probably not going to be possible. Let's do something slightly different. Let's change what we're doing.
100%.
But so in those early days, what do you think? How you thought of the job of an estate agent? Was there anything that stood out to you that was like, holy shit, this is not what I thought it was going to be?
Yeah, I mean, naturally you think of a sales job of you rock up in a nice suit, a nice car, you close the deal, you go home, you earn your commission, and the reality of what a estate agency is so far different from and these days you've got so many TV programs on it as well, like Selling Sunset, $1 Million Listing, all those shows. And
Ryan Serhant,
my guy. And you watch all of those ones and you think, oh my god, that is the best job in the world, and but there is, to phrase the quote out of Hot Fuzz, there's a considerable amount of paperwork involved. There's so much admin, there's so much time spent on nurturing and caring for all these deals. That was sort of probably the biggest shock to me.
So you thought you were just going to be walking around properties, selling, making shit tons of money,
yeah? Well, that was 17-year-old me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Quite stressful.
Yeah, I would say it is quite a stressful job,
Yeah.
but it depends on how you approach the job as well. Like, it's like anything in life. If I always tell my teams, you got to try and compartmentalize the task of the day and the job and the journey that's involved in it. If you look at it as, it's like anything, you look at it as one big task, you're going to stress yourselves out, you're going to get anxious, you're going to get worried. But if you just look at it, okay, I've got to do this, and I've got to do this, and I've got to do this, and I've got to do this, then you just break it down. It's just, all it is, it's just a process. That's all it is.
So I'm assuming, like, on your early days, you didn't just walk in, rock up, and start selling £1 million worth of profit.
No.
So
I wish.
In between when you started and when you started to get to the point when you were competent, was there anybody involved that sort of guided you or helped you through that process?
Oh, massively, yeah. Every manager that I had, every leader that I had taught me something in one way or another. And I moved around offices within the first company quite a bit, so different locations, and each manager taught me something different. And then within probably a couple of years of doing the job, moved up to London and started being an agent in South London, and that taught me a completely different way of working. Like, these guys were on another level from what I'd seen round in Wiltshire. They worked at phenomenal pace, phenomenal attitudes, and they fully performed as if it was their own business. And that just taught me a completely different mindset of how to approach the job.
So when you're saying they performed at a different level, was it to do with commissions? Was it to do with just pride in their job? What was spurring these boys on? I'd
say it's mindset more than anything. That they approached it with just a killer business instinct to do the job. They would be in the offices from 6 a.m. They would leave at 8-9 o'clock at night. They were relentless in what they did to try and get a deal done.
How much did you do then?
Well, I was
in a week.
Crikey. I mean, there was like the earliest I've done appointments this was in London. I used to show bankers around flats at like 5:30 in the morning.
Really?
Because that was when they needed to see these flats before they went into the city to go and earn their money. And I'd go and show barristers and doctors around places at 8-9 o'clock at night because that's the time that they could do. And you did what you did to get the deal done. You worked for the deal.
I've always found that really weird. Like, say if you're trying to view a property, it's like, I can only book you in at like 4 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon, and you're like, that's in like the working day. It's so weird. That's
the difference though. Like, that's the difference you get from like small town estate agents versus your city agents. It's a very different way of working. Around here, they can't be arsed. They're going to go home by R5 and they want to go to the golf course, they want to go and do this, want to go and do that. But that's why they earn shit money.
So you think they're just more efficient, they're just more sort of...
they're more dynamic.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, 100%.
That makes sense. So leading on from that, what does it take to become a successful estate agent? What sort of aspects of yourself do you need?
I think the big thing is you've got to be dynamic in the role, because you're going to meet so many different types of people every single day, every single week, every single month, every single year, that not everyone that you're going to meet is going to be from the same backgrounds, work the same jobs, and the same money, all that sort of thing. So you've got to be a bit of a chameleon when it comes to being able to adapt to all these different characteristics that people have got, and then know how to nurture them to get what you want out of them, but also get the best for them at the same time. The other thing that a lot of people, I think, put aside slightly when it comes to estate agency, and this is like working as an estate agent, is there's two elements to our job. There's the work, which is opening doors, filling out paperwork, calling people back, although that's the work. Our job as a real estate agent is to generate business. That is the job. If you're not generating business, you're not making money. And it's as simple as that. And I think that's where a lot of people fail to it, is if you're coming in and all day you've been doing admin and you've been calling people, but it's been bitty little tasks that aren't generating anything, you're not going to earn any money.
You've not converted a customer.
No, exactly. You're not disciplined enough in your time to get the most out of your day.
So what techniques do you use? So let's say we've got a million pound flat in London. Obviously, there's only certain people that can qualify to buy that, But say you've got five people that are looking at this flat. How do you know who's going to buy it, and how do you know who it's right for?
Well, part of that isn't my job to ask that question. Like, as in, who buys it is down to the owner and who they want to accept an offer from. What my job is to do is to qualify each of those buyers to the best of my abilities, so that the vendor can make a informed decision of who they think is the best purchaser for the property. But that's, again, that sounds really simple, but there's so many agents out there that don't qualify their buyers properly, and then 2, 3, 4 weeks down the line the deal falls through because the right buyer hasn't been selected for that property because they've not done their due diligence properly.
So being in like development and stuff, I know this is going to sound shady as shit, but and probably illegal, highly illegal. But I know people that have when they ask for proof of funds. So in the
do I want to know this? Do I want to know this?
So you're structuring a deal, yeah? You're trying to put a deal together, you haven't got the money. Most developers don't have the money when they're structuring a deal. Some do, most don't.
Just FYI, I've never sold to Connor.
I've never done this. I haven't done this. It's a good technique though if you haven't got the money. So this guy, I'm not going to say who it is, basically photoshopped this bank statement, right?
No,
to change. So it had like, I don't know, a couple $100,000 in there, which is what you need to qualify. Have you come across stuff like this?
Well, I don't want to sound like a snitch or Mr. Compliance over here. However, we have to verify the proof of funds, or that as best of our abilities what we can, under the law. But then the solicitors are then the ones that then will, they go and check the bank statements, they'll go and verify those funds, etc. We as agents don't have the ability to go through and do that. We just have to basically make sure that the information they're informing us stacks up to what the offer is that they're going to put forward. Yeah,
you can't sort of police a guy whether he's committing fraud. No. But the thing is, by the time he comes to his estate agent, to his solicitor stage, he's going to have the money. It was kind of so. It's weird, like moving money around with development and development finance and stuff like that. It happens at really weird stages.
But when we bought our house a couple of years ago, we didn't have the deposit ready when we put an offer in on the house.
Yeah.
But by the time we came to exchange contracts, we had the money. Yeah. But the people that we bought from never asked us to provide the proof, which I, as an agent, I find that completely wrong, because if I'm putting an offer forward to my client, like if you guys are selling your houses and I'm bringing you an offer forward and you go, okay, well, where's the money coming from? And I go, no, no idea.
I haven't got a clue.
Like, you can't make an informed decision whether that person is the best person to buy your house or not.
So this is interesting for me. What's the most creative financing offer you've had on a place?
There are a few places when I worked in Bristol that I saw some pretty complicated sort of ways in doing things and where the money was coming from. I mean, it was all legal, it was all legit how it was being funded, but because typically for like a buy-to-let property or a development, the standard thing has always been you put a 25% deposit down and you take out the rest for a mortgage, that sort of thing. But in the last few years, there's people borrowing money like from investors and people putting money into properties, that sort of thing. I mean, ultimately from my job though, like I don't see the complexities all the time. It's only if someone explains it to me, because all I see is the money there of what I need to see for to then put that deal forward. So, but people have explained to me over the last couple of years like some crazy ways they do it, which I've never heard of before. But you'll know this in your line of work. Like people get really creative and how they like that. That developing network that we went to a few weeks ago, and you hear these guys talking about it, it's like what?
I mean, there's deals that I'm looking at the moment where like there's no money in at all whatsoever, and it's like shit. And people are actually considering it as well, because when the market's real good, people just want cash. They want cash. There's ways that you can structure deals where people are happy to take no cash up front and maybe get a bit of cash flow, and then you can control the deal, and then you've got an option to buy it in 3 or 4 years' time, and then maybe you can develop the property out. It's got a bit of land. It's really interesting what you can do. Yeah, it's like super, super interesting.
Yeah.
But what I want to do now is go back a little bit from where we are now to when you were learning, and if there was any specific points. I like getting into the nitty-gritty bits, like the specific click moment of this is what I learned, now I've got to the next level kind of thing.
Yeah, okay. So I think probably the biggest thing for me in change of mindset was London, like when I worked there and what the skills I picked up from my peers whilst I was there. And then I moved back from London back to Wiltshire for the same agency, and I was on in my head I was on a different level. I was on another level to what everyone else around me was on, because I was coming with a London mindset. So I was, in my opinion, I was killing it in what I was doing, and I was only like 19 at this point as it was. So I was, I was persistent as anything. I kept asking for the promotions and the bigger roles and the bigger jobs, and because I felt like I was ready to do so. And I guess that's that's one thing that I haven't ever stopped doing, is putting myself in a position where I can justify asking for more. Like, I can ask for, you know, the bigger position or the bigger office, or you know, whatever it is, like, but I put myself in that position to be able to justify asking for it.
Okay. So basically, you're saying if you don't ask, you don't get, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. Because the holy grail in a estate agency, for a lot of people, is to become a lister. So that's when you go out and value houses and you bring houses to the market. Like, that's what a lot of people want to go and do. So that was the bit I was sort of desperate to get into that position to go and do, because selling houses is great, but bringing them to the market is like a better achievement, because from a mindset point of view, if you're typically up against a few other agents when you're pitching for a listing, so the satisfaction of walking away with a contract is like, that is I still get that feeling today. From the first one I ever took on to today, I still get that exact same feeling when I sign a contract.
Interesting.
Okay, well, let's talk numbers.
Okay.
What's the biggest property you've ever sold, like, money-wise? I mean, you don't have to say it, but...
In or out of London?
London and out of London.
So London was... It wasn't even that much. I think it was like 1.75 million or something like that.
Yeah.
And then... so you got to remember, for a majority of my career so far, I've worked in what we call the 3-bed semi-market.
Yeah.
So average house price market. So I haven't worked in like the uber luxury, uber expensive market, apart from the last 4 months when I've gone to a new company. So where I am now, you know, we've got deals that are, you know, circa £2 million that are going through at the moment, which again, around in the southwest is quite a lot of money. We've got other stuff that's bubbling at higher rates as well, but it probably doesn't sound that exciting, doesn't it, when we say, like, it's not, I don't know if you're expecting like 30 million or something like that, but it's
pretty big.
It's and those ones are like complicated.
The thing is as well, with like the big deals, like the £30 million properties, I don't necessarily think they need an agent.
Controversial.
So what they need is somebody who's well connected.
Mm-hmm.
So they need somebody who's got previous clients that maybe has, you know, I don't know, a Russian guy here, a multi-millionaire there.
Okay.
The property sells itself. Do you think, you know?
I don't know. That's an interesting point, but equally, the person that has the connections and the little black book.
That's what makes it.
But to get to that point, you have to be an agent.
No, 100%. I get what you're saying.
Typically.
But what you're not getting like Jason walking around saying, "Here's bed 1. Here's bed 5. Here's the ensuite." You're not getting that.
No.
You're getting
not explaining to someone what a kitchen is at a £30 million house.
You know, you're not. It's not that. It is that agent who has got to that level. He's worked for 20 years, 25 years, whatever. He's getting paid for his experience, but it's a different skill set. I think it comes down to more what you're talking about, which is relationships with people.
It's networking at that level. Like, I'm not at that level, but I know people that are at that level, and what they do is they network and they know people and they're connected. Is it your 80s Wolf of Wall Street style selling? Absolutely not. No, it's nothing like that. And that's been an interesting thing for me to witness over like nearly the last decade, is the change in like attitude towards a estate agency. And when I've gone from different companies and to where I am now, the way that we do business is very, very different.
Okay.
I want to touch on something that's a bit funny.
What is this?
So in the developer community, agents are seen as...
Careful.
They're seen as like, not every agent, but they're seen as sort of like snakes. Do you get what I mean? Do you feel... So what we have the impression that agents have sort of got this list underneath their desk, okay, a load of names that all the good deals come to, and then when there's a great deal, it's like, oh, I'm going to ring up Johnny who's going to buy it like that.
But you've also got to remember in that, so not every agent is like that, because not every agent is actually dynamic enough and has and controversially has enough brain cells to think like that. But if you think, for that person that is instructing that agent to market that property, that's what they want to know. They want, like, if you're going to sell your property, what do you want to know from the agent? Have you got buyers? Oh, yes, Mr. Vendor, I have buyers. And you put like your little list and you call people. But that's where, from a developer and agent point of view, is building relationships up. So, you know, but ultimately, the thing that everyone has to remember is the agent works for the person selling the property. It's not an American system where you have a buying agent and a selling agent. In the UK, you just have a selling agent.
Okay.
So buyers get really upset when they don't, or buyers or developers or whatever the person is trying to buy a property, thinking, oh, the agent's against me. The agent's not against you. It's just they don't work for you. They're paid by the person selling the property.
Do you think there's a room for improvement in the UK system?
Oh, my word, yes, absolutely.
How could we improve it?
Well, similar to, like, in my opinion, like the American systems, there's a few agents in the UK that up to quite high-end levels that will work to similar systems where they'll offer shares of fees out, that if someone introduces a buyer to the property, they'll cut the fee with them. Like, for me, that is a much better way to do a transaction with a prospective vendor, because they're getting the best of both worlds. They're getting looked after by someone who has an interest to bring their client forward to the property and an interest in someone that is wanting to get them the best price for selling. I see no negative to it personally.
I think that sounds a bit like, do you know Tyler Newman?
Yes.
Luxury Property Partners.
Yeah.
Is that something similar to what he's doing?
I don't really know his model too well on that side. I know a couple of better ones that do it.
Okay.
Better. Yeah.
Okay. When you sell a property, right?
Yeah.
Do you have a structure on how you do it and how you sell it to the person? What's your technique?
So it depends on the property and the strategy. So we ultimately, as I said, like, my job is to get the person selling the best price I possibly can do for their property, but the best price and the best buyer at the same time. So typically, like, how we will do it is you'll get all your marketing collateral put together, so all your video tools, all your photos, your floor plans, everything gets put together ready. We will know people that will be looking for property similar, so we'll introduce those buyers to the potential property ahead of full launch of marketing, and then we'll go to full launch of marketing. You'll then have a couple of different strategies. You'll go open market, where we'll book viewings in sort of as and when we can with the owners, or you'll launch with a open house block viewing style, which is my preferred method of how I like to launch property.
Okay.
And get everyone in to come and see it on one day, over a few hours, because it gives everyone a fair opportunity to see the property, and then it means for the owner that they're hopefully going to have a selection of offers that then they can then select from.
Demand. You might get better prices, yeah.
There could be a little bit of tension involved in strategies like that, but yeah, that's how I like doing things. Yeah.
Okay. So in terms of, like, the actual real estate business, what is you might not know actually, because I don't know if you. Let's just say hypothetically, what is the sort of profit margins on a real estate? Say your random one, like, I don't know, Rights Residential, single branch.
Oh, I see what you mean. Well, I can give you some sort of in context sort of numbers. So it cost me £38,000 a month to run my estate agency.
Okay.
That cost doesn't change throughout the year. There might be a couple of different costs where marketing costs are higher one month than they are another, but typically 38k a month is what it cost me.
Are you allowed to say what region that is in? Where you are?
That's in Berkshire.
Okay, so.
But when I've then ran an agency in Bristol, the costs were a lot higher than that. The cost was sort of like 60, 70k a month. Yeah. Some upwards because of, like, the team size we had, where the office was located in Clifton, so it was a lot more expensive to run. So then the costs go up from sort of that point.
Can you give us, like, a rough breakdown on where that money's going? What sort of... Just so we know, like, wages, marketing.
Yeah. So a big cost will go towards wages.
Yeah.
That's where a big cost will go towards. You've got the rent of the building. If they don't own the building, you've then got marketing. So obviously you've got to pay for, your property portals each month. If you use a photographer company, you've got to pay for that. You've got to pay to keep the lights on, the heating going, parking permits, fuel. There's so many costs that are involved in it. Like, we get a huge Excel spreadsheet P&L that comes through, and it gives me a breakdown of where all the 250 odd different lines of expenses that we pay for each month. Yeah. So it's in the traditional model of estate agency, is expensive to run an office. Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting to know. I can talk to you a bit more about that afterwards.
Yeah.
So let's go sort of forward to present, and what is your view on the current market? Where are we in the cycles of? Do you look into the 18-year cycle?
It's more of a 7-year cycle.
Okay.
In my opinion, personally, I think we typically see a 7-year cycle. So we've gone, to point it obvious, the pre-COVID years, everything was quite stable. It was quite normal. There was, it was sort of the normal numbers, but nothing crazy was going on. Then COVID hit. Coming out of COVID, from sort of May until probably September of 2020, there were loads of houses coming on the market where people were desperate to upsize, get bigger gardens, or they were sick of each other, so they're getting divorced, or whatever the scenarios were. There was lots of houses and lots of inventory coming to the market. Some of my biggest months I've ever done on new properties was during that time period. And then, obviously, the government put the stamp duty incentive out, where up to £500,000 you didn't have to pay any stamp duty. And then the market just went bonkers, literally to the point where I could put a house on the market and within seconds, the phone was ringing for people wanting to come and see it.
And above asking offers.
Every single time. The challenge during that time period, it wasn't, because usually winning the listings is the hardest point in an estate agency business. And then selling them is then equally as difficult, because typically what it would take you 3 months to sell a property before COVID, and then after that time period you were talking like days of how long it would take you to sell something. So
in that part, how were you qualifying these sellers quick enough? These buyers, quick enough.
So, also you've got to remember there was a huge health thing going on at the time as well. That people had to wear masks to appointments. We had to ask them COVID related questions. So during that time period, what agents across the country had developed is a system where we would ask for all of the evidence to be able to buy a property before they would come and view it, so that we knew that there was no risk factor involved of people just wasting time and just coming for the sake of coming along to a viewing. So we would ask for, proof of funds, mortgage and principal, cash, solicitors' details, everything before they set foot in the door.
I feel like that should just be a standard thing.
I don't disagree.
That's quality. That's what I do.
It did alleviate all of that straight away, and it actually made the process a lot quicker because we had all that information to start with.
Yeah.
But there were every property was getting 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 viewings on it, and you were getting dozens of offers coming in on every house. It was,
I feel like it was even more extreme on the rental side of things. People
crazy.
could not get a place to rent.
No.
It was incredible. At one point, between when me and Savannah were buying this place and trying to get rid of Hatesbury or do whatever we're doing, we were looking for somewhere to rent, and it was just near on impossible.
Yeah.
We said, we'll pay 100, 150, 200, whatever you basically within reason, up to 300-400 quid up, we'd pay. And they were like, sorry, it's booked.
Yeah,
and we're
done.
Why is it on the website still? Take it down. It's so annoying.
Yeah. It was a really crazy time period. It was, and I've got to go as far as saying is all my, a lot of my friends work in a estate agency, and all of us agreed that time period was not fun.
No,
that was not fun to work in that environment because people were getting upset they weren't getting properties or they were paying over the odds for it, and unfortunately we're the ones that get the brunt of all of that because we're the ones that are in the middle. We didn't want a marketplace like that. It was like, whoa, let's just turn it down a little bit. Would be fab. Yeah.
So were you making? It sounds stupid. Were you making more money?
Yes.
Okay. How much more as a percentage?
Probably nearly double.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that time period was.
And that's just
lucrative.
Because the amount of deals that were flowing through.
Yeah, we were doing some big months on exchanges. We were getting a lot of deals through. There were some months where we were completing on 20, 30, 40 houses a month, which is not normal to that sort of velocity and that sort of level. So it was, the money was turning over.
When you were speaking to the people that were buying, did you have any? Did you question them in terms of why they were going for this house, and then also on the flip side with the sellers, did you question them on why they were selling? Was there specific reasons?
Yeah, a lot of it was people were upsizing to get bigger gardens, to get bigger houses because they've been locked up in smaller places. There was a lot of people that were wanting, because at that time period I worked in Wiltshire. There's a lot of people trying to get out into the countryside a little bit. So we had people moving in from London and Surrey and quite suburban built up areas. But various different reasons. A lot of divorces as well. There was a lot of people separating during that time period. So I only dealt with, from what I was told, one client selling that was because of a relative dying. It was a probate sale because of COVID.
Strange. You would have thought during these times more people would have been dying.
Maybe
we won't necessarily touch on
that. maybe I won't go down that rabbit hole.
No, we won't go down that rabbit hole.
All I'm going to say is I dealt with a fair few hundred transactions and I only had one COVID-related death incident. Yeah.
Very interesting.
And I worked in a very busy part of the world then as well.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah, we don't want to. Yeah, we got a MI6 tracker now. His name's Bob. Hi, Bob.
Hi, Mum.
Yeah. So I'm trying to run back to the nitty gritty again.
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking about people in a estate agency who are sort of lethargic in the way they move. They mentally, physically.
Yeah.
So, do you see a opportunity in terms of the way that you approach the market? Say if you were to come out of like your own, the company you're working with, this is hypothetical, this is not happening, and you were going to open up your own estate agency.
Yeah.
Is there anything you could do to totally like smash the market and do something totally different?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So what I think is missing from a lot of estate agency businesses is actually just doing the basics correctly and getting your processes right and delivering on just the most mundane, boring stuff ever. However, caveat to that, the things that are going to set apart agents from other agents over the next 5 to 10 years, and I'm by no means an influencer in any way, shape or form, but it's social media.
Okay.
That, in my personal opinion, is going to separate a lot of businesses from other businesses and a lot of agents from other agents, is how they can manipulate the social media market as much as they can have a list of potential buyers already, sat behind the scenes.
So what's the chain of process in terms of like social media? So we've got you posting your video of this nice house. Who sees it? Where does the sale come from?
Yeah. So I'm in the really early stages of my Instagram page at the moment. So a lot of it has had to be organic growth of just posting consistently, getting people to share posts, that sort of thing. There's been a couple of ideas that we've, I tell my clients that I have an Instagram page. So I'll tell my sellers, I'll tell my buyers to go and follow me on there. And even though I'm only probably, 10 weeks into starting an Instagram page, pretty much every single post I'll put on Instagram now, I will get a message from a buyer asking to come and view something. Now that is me with currently on the 9th of April, like 230 followers. And I've got colleagues that have got 170,000 followers.
Okay.
Now, interestingly enough, I work with someone who has got a really big following, or works in the company, has a really big following on social media, and they only get 20% of their deals come from social media. 80% are from traditional methods, and they're probably one of the most engaged people on social media in the real estate business in the UK. Okay.
I think that's probably going to shift in terms of when...
I agree.
Yeah, so if you're ahead of the game... When all the oldies die off, to put it nicely, like we're going to be looking at properties like Ryan said on social media. We're going to be buying that way.
It's one of my biggest regrets is when I started in 2014. My biggest regret is not starting something, because if I'd started on Instagram then, I'd be an influencer.
Okay.
Maybe.
So you would. So your guy who's got like however many followers he's got. Has he leveraged that following in a different way other than just selling houses? Is he making money off his platform in any other way?
I don't know. I don't know that question.
When you asked him, Tom.
Because we're not quite friends yet. So
you friend dropped him, but he wasn't.
No, I don't. It's oh, my friend. No, I don't know is the honest answer. I know it's a tool used for the job. Whether it's used for anything else outside of that, I have no idea.
Now, this is another question I'd like to know. You probably don't know, but can he demand more money?
No comment. I have no idea. I bet no idea.
I bet he can demand a better.
I'll let your imagination roll with that one. Say nothing. I value my job, so I'm going to say nothing.
Please don't follow me. Right, so again, going back to when you started, let's put ourselves in the shoes of somebody that is trying to get into a state agency.
Yeah.
Would you have any specific advice to them on where to go and what to focus on?
No. Is the honest answer. I started at a very big company that was able to offer me an apprenticeship, so I could start in a company younger than what you typically can do. So it depends on where someone's at the stage of their journey. Like if you're under 20, then apprenticeship, in my opinion, is a really good way to go to get to sort of learn the job whilst doing the job at the same time. If you're sort of early 20s to mid 20s, just going into the job and getting a taste of it, my advice always is to start at bigger companies because they've got usually better training facilities, they've got more opportunities, better support, that sort of thing. There's nothing wrong with local independents. There's some amazing ones that are ran. I'm talking from my own experiences that I worked at bigger companies, and that's sort of what sort of springboarded my career into different directions.
Okay. So you're basically saying that you need to get in a place where the successful people are? Yeah,
I mean, you want to, again, in the days of social media like what we're in at the moment, it's really easy for someone to look at who is doing well in their chosen field, and if you have the opportunity to, that's who you'd want to work for, and that's who you'd want to work alongside with, because if they're successful, they're gonna give you some of that success in what they're gonna teach you, and there's telltale signs. It doesn't take a rocket science to work out who are the good and bad agents in whichever town they live in. So you'd want to go and work for the ones that are the good ones.
What would you say is a bad agent?
Where?
What would you say?
in location wise. So let's talk about where we are now. Let's say we'll.
I don't really want to call out any agents, to be honest.
What? So we've
what
already.
What makes a bad state agent?
Again, I'd say someone that's stuck in their ways. Just because it worked in the 90s and it worked in the 80s and it even worked in the early 2000s, it doesn't mean it works now as a practice.
Yeah.
The definition of an insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result.
Yeah.
You've got to be dynamic. You've got to think on your feet. Before the year 2000, when Rightmove started, agents used to have massive drawers filled with brochures, and people would come in, and the agents would be the expert in their town. Then when Rightmove came along, that sort of got disrupted, and loads of agents didn't want to use it because it took away what they had been doing for donkey's years. Now all the agents rely on Rightmove, and Zoopla and other property portals are available. And now this and
other property portals are available. Just
please speak to the bill payer. And now that social media has emerged as the next thing, there's loads of agents that are reluctant to take that on board and to run with that as well. And I think that's where people are missing a trick massively. Is you've got to run with the trends and run with the times to keep yourself ahead of the game and ahead of the competition.
That's an interesting point I was thinking about as well. So in terms of technology and other forms of even AI coming in there, have you seen different ways that we can leverage technology for property?
Yes, but not yet in the UK. Okay. So in America and in Dubai and places, there's VR headsets of developments and new builds, and you could have a walk around tour of somewhere before it's even been built. You don't get that at Persimmon. That doesn't exist.
I don't think you necessarily want that at Persimmon.
No.
On some of the stuff they do, I don't really want to see it.
So I think the COVID time as well, especially fast forwarded a lot of technology in the UK. Like now most agents will use drones and again video tours and that sort of thing. Whereas again that was not a thing 3 years ago. It just didn't really exist, to be honest.
Okay, so that was visual. Now let's, in terms of AI and stuff, it's probably not a thing. But in terms of workflow and that sort of mundane paperwork stuff, is there anything now that's come to the market which can speed that process up or automate it? Or
there's always transformations in the prop tech industries of what different companies are trying to release and bring out to try and help the day-to-day life better. It's tricky for me because I'm a very small cog in a big company, so I'm not at the forefront of seeing this technology and what comes out. It's not my decision to make it. I don't really, I pay attention to it to a little bit. I think the biggest problem is, and this is a UK thing in general, when you look at other countries and you look at how much some of these real estate companies make in other places, they have got the funds and means available to invest into a lot of this technology. Whereas the ones in the UK, there is, now I'm going to bring it up, there is a massive culture within the British people to get estate agents as cheap as humanly possible. So therefore, the margins of what estate agencies make in the UK is a lot less. So their investment into that technology isn't going to be there because they're all they're just trying to make a living. When other agents are out there charging 0.5%, 0.75%, 1% to sell a house, that's. It doesn't make a lot of money.
No. You've got to turn a lot of deals around to get that.
A lot of deals, yeah, exactly.
Okay. And why do you think the culture is different in the UK compared to like America and Dubai?
Because again, I think there's a massive thing of we've always done it this way, so we'll always do it this way. Agents in America are treated as professionals. They're treated the same as doctors.
Okay.
They've got to take exams, they've got to have licenses, they're very much respected. Whereas agents over here, anybody can be an estate agent. I did it when I was 17. Anyone can do the job.
Qualifications at all?
Well, it depends on what. If you work in lettings, then there are certain qualifications that you have to go through. In sales, no. Anyone can turn up to go and do the job. So it's not respected in the same way. And as you said earlier on, in the developers world, estate agents are regarded as snakes.
Yeah, and also, I'm not going to call
not as professions.
No, so this was a while back. I went to see a property that I was looking at buying. And I kid you not, some of the questions that I was asking this person were very simple to answer. Mm-hmm. And this person did not have a clue about property. Even just the basics of construction. I know he doesn't necessarily need it to be an estate agent, but you'd like to know why that's like that or what they've used to, he might not necessarily know, but it'd be nice to have a little bit of a...
But what you've got to remember, Connor, though, is you've got to remember the model of most agencies is you get, the fancy pants manager or lister will go out to go and value a house and go and win the business. Mm-hmm. And then the person then turns up to go and does the viewings of that place is the negotiator. That's probably on £16,000 a year, gets 4% commission of what the fee is. Has probably only been there a couple of months. They don't know what a combi boiler is. They don't know what double glazing looks like. They don't, they don't know what the difference between a Georgian and Victorian house is. They just started. But again, you go to maybe other agencies, and I'm branding everyone the same as this. But you go to other agencies, and the level of treatment that you get is a lot better because it's the professionals that turn up to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a sweeping statement I've just made there, but it is typically very true, and that's why people get annoyed with agents. Is the whole thing of this is a kitchen and this is about. Yes, I can clearly see that it's a kitchen. I wasn't going to take a shower in the fridge, was I? Thank you for being here.
No, yeah, it is. I think there is definitely a time for disruption in terms of the real estate market in the UK.
I agree.
It's just who's going to do it and how it's going to happen.
There are people doing it right now.
Okay.
There are people.
And you're thinking it's mainly coming from social media, is it?
I think so. Social media, technology, the brokerage system of doing things. The next 5 to 10 years, the landscape in UK estate agencies is going to look very, very different. And I for one can't wait for it. I think it's a huge
opportunity.
Massive opportunity. But if you're gonna take advantage of that opportunity, you need to start now. You need to be getting ahead of the waves in the competition, not the old boys brigade that have been doing it that way since the 80s and 90s.
Because they're just looking forward to retirement, aren't they?
Yeah. Exactly. You got to that younger crowd, not even younger crowd, but the people that understand it of what's happening. They're the ones that are going to rise to the top when all this happens.
Okay. Now let's go forward to present now.
Mm-hmm.
Have you noticed any difference in the market in terms of deals falling through? Have you got any experience with times becoming tougher?
Yeah, it's definitely quarter one this year has been an interesting one. So if I go back to quarter four of last year, obviously there was loads of things that happened in the marketplace. Inflation, interest rates rising, 9 prime ministers that we went through, whatever happened last year, it was chaos, and that sent a massive shockwave into the market, and basically buyers just lost confidence in what was going on, and sellers lost confidence in what was going on. Coming into quarter one of this year, my market changed coming into this year. So I now deal with £1 million plus properties, and $1 million to probably 3 million. There was a lot of confidence in the marketplace because a lot of these people were leveraging themselves to buy houses in very different ways. So rather than mortgaging themselves up and taking down those high interest rates, they were buying in cash. So they were selling their stocks and shares, they were taking dividends out of their own companies and buying properties. The houses that were, say, under 700 grand were becoming trickier to sell because those were the people that were affected the most by the change in the marketplace. Okay. But how you've got to view it is, like, say now the interest rate is, 4.5%, and a year ago you could get 1.8% or 1.6%, or, like, don't quote me on my numbers on that one. So I don't do mortgages. So say they've doubled or tripled or however they've gone up in. What people were expecting to happen is that they were going to get massive discounts on houses, and if a house was £500,000, they were going to buy it for 400 grand because the interest rates had gone up. What unfortunately happened for those people is there is still a massive lack of inventory available of houses to purchase. So there were still, 6, 7, 8 buyers per property, which meant the houses were selling still for asking price, if not over. But what was then happening is your £500,000 house is now going to cost you the same as a 600 grand house because your mortgage payments are double, triple what they would have been a couple of years ago. And that's sort of still happening at the moment. There's still a lack of houses available, but there is still a massive pent-up demand of buyers wanting to purchase. So
see, this is where, like, I've spoken to many people and they said, people are thinking there's a market crash coming, there's a market crash coming, there's a market crash coming. You can always say there's a market crash coming, but I don't actually think there is. Not for the next 2 years at least. Maybe like 2026, something like that.
I slightly disagree. We're in my opinion, and different people in the industry, we are at the bottom at the moment.
You think we're at the bottom?
I think we're at the bottom.
Really?
Because you've got to think now, like, the base rate's just gone up again.
That's good news. That's real good news.
Please don't quote me on this as well. I hope the podcast stays small for a bit longer.
I'm trying to buy right now. I'm trying to buy everything I can.
The base rate's just gone up again. Interest rates are sort of sat where they're sat at the moment. So I think personally, because you've got to think next year is an election year as well, which always sends a bit of a shockwave into the market. And I think the election is the end of next year as well,
So nothing's going to change in between now and then because they're not going to upset the apple cart, are they?
No.
So we're talking, we've got that amount of time.
No. And you've also got, like, you've still always got factors in the marketplace where people need to move. You've got debt, divorce, and death. Of the main factors why people need to move property and need to sell and need to keep moving. And there's still, like, around where I am, there's a massive group of buyers that moved out of London a couple of years ago to get their kids into schools in the area and haven't found houses to buy yet and moved into rented properties, and they still want to buy something.
Yeah, it's
not what people think it is at the moment. People think it's like Armageddon out there, and it's, we're putting signs in the window saying 80% off house and all this. It's not happening.
The very interesting thing as well, obviously you might have remembered it, but I can't remember it. 2008.
No, I started secondary school, I think, then. The same as you.
Yeah. So I can't remember, but I can remember what people have told me, and everybody was saying the market is not crashing. The market is not crashing.
But you remember,
right now, everybody is saying the market's going to crash.
But you remember, not saying. Yeah. This is not saying a you remember thing, but, like, in that time period, the reason why a lot of the markets crash, and this is proper term, like, economical. This isn't. This is Tom Howell's economy. God,
this is not financial advice.
Yeah, this isn't. But back then, a lot of people were leveraged really high on financing. Like, you had 110% mortgages, 100% mortgages. Whereas in today's world, people have got equity in their houses.
I think I saw a stat. It's like 50% of mortgages are on fixed rate terms in the UK. Don't quote me on that, maybe less, maybe like 40%, but a vast majority of fixed rate terms for 5 years. So, and then that doesn't take into account the people who are debt free, they've got no mortgage. So, and there's a vast majority of people on that in terms of the people who are old, the older generation. So there's a small sort of contingent of the market that could push it down. This is totally out of catastrophic events. We've got Russia and Ukraine bombing the shit out of each other right now. That could turn into World War III. If that happens, we're not too worried about the market. We're just worried about not having to go and
surviving.
Fight a Ukrainian or something. Sorry, Russian. It depends which side you're on that as well. We won't get into that. Okay. But I'm going to get fucked over for that. I like how you're going with that. I like the thought process because most people are just seeing these crazy prices, but I think we haven't experienced an interest rate rise. I haven't in my life. Like, money's been free. Money's been fucking free.
It has been.
So cheap. And now it's still very cheap. I think the only issue with it is the house prices are really inflated. So what could cause a problem, in my eyes, is just like a mass layoff event, like a recession which causes people to lose their jobs. That will then impact the property market, but I don't think it's going to impact it in terms of it's going fucking down and prices are like I think it'll be like a 10-15%, and that's like back to like 2 years ago, and that's still high. Like, we're doing good still.
Yeah,
exactly. Like, I can tell you from someone that works in the industry, lots of friends that do, we're not in a crash. You know, prices aren't dropping drastically. I've known people that work in small towns that are outperforming some of their best years they've ever had at the moment. So the demand is still very much there for someone to buy a house. They're not. Someone gave me this analogy not long ago. It's a perfect sort of example. The last couple of years, the market's been like a cappuccino. You've had a really strong coffee and you've had a nice frothy bit on top with chocolate sprinkles and all sorts. The market now is like a flat white. You've still got a brilliant coffee, you've still got a strong base, but you've not got your frothy bit. You're not selling for 10-20% over asking price, but you're selling for
what it's worth.
It's a strong coffee you've got.
No, that's meant. Yeah, no. So I think as well, people can get panicked in terms of the property market moves slowly, like really slowly. So with a stock market crash, it's like you wake up one day, your stock's down 30%. You're like, fuck, like, we're fucked.
But you've also got to remember, like, on a housing market crash, this is again the interesting thing is a crash is only relevant when you come to like liquefy what your asset is. So if you bought a house for 200 grand and it could be worth now 350, but you sell it at 325, like, people go, well, that's a crash. Well, it isn't, because you made 125 grand. That's you've made money on what you've put. If you bought for 200 and it's now not worth 180, well, that's crashed.
And
I think that's sometimes where people get things confused, and the media doesn't help with this as well. That they blanket the whole country in the same way, but they're not hyper-analysing different marketplaces, and they're not, what happens in Sunderland and what happens in Bristol, and then what happens in Cheshire and what happens in, in Surrey, very different things.
But I think that's done on purpose.
You don't say. No.
I think that's done on
the
purpose.
Media doing something like that on purpose? You must be ridiculous.
Bastards.
How dare you?
But so from that point of view now, in terms of where we're looking, what is your advice to a first-time buyer?
Oh, this is perfect.
Joey. Let's put some context out there.
Okay.
Joey's 25. Okay, he's a first-time buyer. He's living with his mum and dad. He's saving up his deposit. He's earning good money. He can get his deposit. He can get 20 grand together in like the next year.
Yeah.
How should he be approaching things?
Okay. So
if you're in my shoe.
If I was in your shoes...
Only one of them. Only one shoe.
I only get one shoe. He was wearing...
It's going to be difficult because you've got to hop about. Don't step in any dog shit.
This is false economy. He was wearing sliders on shoes. I've been lied to. So I guess, so my advice would be, it depends on what your need is to buy a house.
Okay.
So...
Profit.
If you're looking for something like that and you're looking to flip it, make money on it, etc., I probably wouldn't buy now. Like, if you can live at home with parents or whatever, and you're paying very little rent or very little towards it, and you can keep saving your money, I'd personally keep saving your money whilst keeping an eye out for the market. But it depends on where you want to buy. Do you want to buy in Wiltshire? Do you want to buy in South Wales? Do you want to buy in the North East? Do you want to,
What would you do? Where would you buy for first time?
Well, I mean, there's socio-economic questions on that, isn't there? Like, where's your job based? How far do you want to commute to be? Like, what quality of life do you want? There's all those sorts of questions around it. So if I was buying, I mean, did people know that we're in Wiltshire? I guess people know we're in Wiltshire. So we're in Wiltshire.
We're in Wiltshire, guys.
We're in Wiltshire.
Did they get that? We're in Wiltshire.
It depends on what your need is to buy a property, and then that is such a subjective question. I've answered that massively like a politician.
Well, let's do it then. Right, Joe. Tell Tom what.
Well, I just want to make profit out of it. I mean, obviously it's slow, but I want to make profit out of it.
So talk about your job. What do you do?
About me, I'm a telecoms engineer.
Okay.
Obviously, I'm living with my parents, saving money. I want to get into property. I don't really want to say my goals, but I want to get into property and get into the property ladder next year, hopefully. And I just want to know what's the best way of getting into it, because I don't really know a lot of it, knowledge-wise.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the thing at the moment is interest rates are higher.
Yeah.
Property prices, as we've just discussed, haven't come down. So for you to buy as a first-time buyer, you're going to be buying in a pretty hot market still, depending on exactly what location, and the interest rate is going to be quite high.
Okay.
So when are the interest rates going to come down? Who knows? But it's probably going to, I imagine, 3-5 years, something like that, until they start dropping. So, but if you can spot an opportunity to buy something that is under market value for, how Connor will look at his deals where there's a need for someone to sell, that's the sort of thing maybe I would take advantage of at the moment. Right, okay. If you go to a house and there's 15 other people that are viewing it and there's 5 other offers on and you're going to flip it, you ain't going to flip it for that much money because the price is going to be inflated because of the competition on it. Okay. So I guess it's just about being smart in where you're looking for your deals. And making sure, I'm sure you will, but, having that, spreadsheet type mentality towards it to say, okay, if I want to get a 20-30% profit margin on, I need to buy for this, costs are going to be this, the end sale price is going to be worth this. Okay. But I've got friends and I know people at the moment, I've got friends, I've got money, pay my mortgage. I know people that have bought houses at the moment that have managed to flip and make a profit because they've gone for the right deal. Right, okay. And they've not gone open market.
Okay.
That's where I'd like to step in.
I think
Connor doesn't care about interest rates.
Mr. Cash over it.
I've got no money at all whatsoever. So the way that I see, going back to estate agents, I see estate agents in 2 different lights in terms of where we are in the property cycle. Yeah. So when we've had a crash, estate agents are your best friend as a developer, as a property. They give you all the good deals. When you're in the top of the market, I think I very rarely look there because I think there's so many eyes on it that it's kind of...
Yeah, but is that the estate agent's fault?
No, it's not the estate agent's fault at all.
Be careful what we're saying, Connor, thank you.
It's not the estate agent's fault at all. They're just doing their jobs. I like estate agents. It's but in terms of where to buy your deals from, so I've got a new perspective over the last sort of 6 months probably. I was looking at property in a weird way in that kind of the market is what makes you your money. So if you're in a rising market, you're going to make money, and if you're in a falling market, you're going to lose money. But if you're smart about your deals, that's not the case. You can make money in any market. It's just about where you get your deals from and what the percentages are on the deals. So it doesn't matter what the price is of a house in this area. You just know you're buying it that much below. So what I'm trying to say is you won't be getting those deals below market from an estate agent, really. Or if you do, they're already gone to his mate. You're probably in his list. You're probably you're in the under the table list, right? And if you're in there, fair play, that's cool. But I'm not in there yet, so I have to look. I have to look in different places, and those places come from people you know. It's really weird. It's relationships. Like it's not even like a bloke on the street. It's somebody you know. You talk to them about what you do. They're like, oh mate, actually I know this guy who's got this, and it's like you can't sell it because it's fucked, and you're like, that sounds like something for me. And that's where I feel like it comes from. So in terms of for your first property, I would argue that you just want to get one, because you're young enough that you could buy a 3-bed house and rent out 2 of the rooms and cover your mortgage if the rates rise and you live there for 5 years. But I think just getting on the market is a good thing, but I don't think you're necessarily going to have the... This is controversial. When I first started trying to buy properties, I didn't have the confidence, the skills, the knowledge, or the determination to buy something like that. The only reason I got to where I was because I had a real good group of people around me that I learned from. If you're on your own, like you've got me around you, but I don't have what they have in terms of like resources and stuff. So I think you want to get one which is just like a tartar upper. You can do a new kitchen, do a new bathroom. You might be able to make 10-15 grand. That's really good. Or like I said, you can live in there for 2 years and maybe rent each room out like a little mini HMO. I don't know about the legality on that, but yeah, you can rent each room out. bit of cash. Rent your room out, cover your mortgage, and live there and just ride out the hard times. And then when you come out the other side, hopefully you'll be in a good spot. But I don't know, Tom. You can push back on that if that's something you.
No, I think it depends on, as I said, it depends on your reasoning for purchasing. Like if it's just because you want to get on the ladder and you've got money sat in the pocket that's burning, don't rush it, because that decision could cost you a lot of money if you just rush into something for the sake of wanting to rush into something. That's not trying to put off buying anything, but just don't rush a deal. And if it doesn't stack up, like every good investor that I know and good developer I know literally has the same spreadsheet for every single deal they do, and it is they put
the deal stacks.
If the deal stacks, buy it. If it doesn't stack, walk away. Never, like, for your purpose.
You're trying to say you have like an equation then.
Yeah, like you just, when you're doing it for your if you're going to move in there and live in there for the next 5 years, you'll get emotionally attached to it. But if you're looking at it from a business perspective, it's not emotional. It's a business transaction. So does the number stack? Yes, no, wicked, move on. Like that's it.
I think as well, because of what I look at it from like almost blurred vision. So only a certain percentage of what comes even into my eyes is, it's kind of, I'm not looking at the whole market, because the whole market's probably not for me. It's more for consumers who are looking to live in the house, to have a lovely home to live in with their family. Like you can't really look at that as an investment. I mean, buy-to-let's dead in my opinion. Buy-to-let in terms of buying a house and renting it out for a yield is fucking dead. There's nothing. The way you can do it though is if you can buy it, add an extension, add another room, then let it out, refinance it. That still works. I believe that still works. You'd like to look at Heytesbury. It's on a 5-year fix. The mortgage is $450 a month, and the rental income is $1350. And I pulled $120,000 out of it, and it's like, that still works. So you've got to look at those deals, but then again, it's a lot of capital up front. It's so difficult,
and it's the knowledge and the skill set and the resources and everything there.
It's so difficult. You've got to look at. Don't get me wrong. When we go to buy your first house, I'll help you out as much as I can. But it's very difficult to. As well as time. It's timing. It's like in the market where you are.
Yeah, but you got to remember, like you're doing Heytesbury as well. Like you didn't buy that on the open market.
No, I didn't. I've never bought a house on the open market.
This is it.
So it's even this one that I'm going through now, it's not on the open market. This one wasn't on the open market. This was listed, but I didn't buy it off an estate agent. You're
telling me you cut an agent out of the deal with
it? Yeah. Well, it was on there for months, so he wasn't doing his job, Tom. I ain't paying him shit.
Wasn't me. I don't operate around it.
I mean.
I'll keep that noted.
Well, those questions as well, like one of those questions which is so I put it in there just to see what you were going to say, but it's almost like you can't get an answer for it, can you?
Which one?
The first time buyer thing.
I forget where we came down this rabbit hole now.
The first time buyer question. It's like, how do I do this? It's almost like it's so personal to you, isn't it?
Oh, massively. Yeah. Like it's if you were asking me what should I do if I was a first time buyer in London, or if I was a first time buyer in Middlesbrough or Liverpool or Bristol or wherever it is, like everywhere's slightly different, and it depends on your need to own that property as well. And if you're looking at it from an investment point of view, it's a very different to I need somewhere to live. So I'd say from your side, like, and anyone, like, look at it from a business transaction. If that's what the mindset is. But if you need to live somewhere, then buy it, because over the next 5-10 years that you're going to live there, the market's going to go up, it's going to go down, it's going to go up, it's going to go down, but it's no odds whatsoever.
As long as you can pay your mortgage every month.
Yeah, exactly. As long as by the end of it, you're not in negative equity, then job done.
Then you can do some really interesting stuff. Right. So now let's go from that conversation. Let's go towards your most difficult deal.
Okay. How long you got?
So I want to hear something that's like really annoying, and you're like, you don't understand why it's happened, and you still managed to get it through. And what techniques did you use to get it through, Tom?
It's a very loaded question, this, because there are. I'm not saying that every deal is complicated, but there are majority of transactions will have complications one way or another, like whether I've had deals before where the owner, say for example we're selling a probate property on behalf of a family or an executor or whatever. I've had it then before where then the executor has then died whilst we're trying to sell the probate property, and then so like that is a really complicated situation trying to get around, because then it's just complicated. There's no point in me going into the depths of it.
Yeah.
And then, I've had other ones before where, we're selling a property because, Mr. and Mrs. are getting divorced, and then it turns out that there's loads of the house was financed really heavily, but Mrs. didn't know any of this, and then we've got banks chasing, and it's like chaos because there's so much money borrowed on the house, and it's but Mrs. didn't know, and it's just like there's an old saying in agency, buyers are liars, and that sometimes can transform into people that are selling properties as well. All of my clients are fantastic, but that's a generalised statement. But so sometimes what the reality is at the start and then what the reality turns out to be can be slightly different at times, and often the not complications of deals turn out to be when people don't necessarily tell us all the truth at sort of the start of it. So to pin it to like one deal in particular, like I've had mad clients before, like I've had like the most eccentric clients in the world before that just make life hard work because of how they are as people.
Is that on the buyer side or the seller side?
Both.
Okay.
I've had...
Connor's one of them.
Yeah, no, I'm not. No, Connor doesn't use agents, apparently. He goes behind their backs.
Cut them out.
Blacklist him. So it's hard to sort of pin it to maybe what... Like, I have a deal going through at the moment where it was quite an expensive property. I can't give numbers away for obvious reasons. It was quite an expensive property, and the person that bought the house, sometimes not everyone keeps their house up together and in the right ways where they need to. And so over the years, there's loads of work that's been needed to done, which they haven't maybe done to the house. And then so when like surveys and things get done, it pulls, surveys pull a house apart in terms of all the work that needs to be done.
Those surveys are so funny.
But you're talking hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of repairs that are needed to get done, but you're dealing with people that they are CEOs of businesses, they're very high up in their fields of what they do, and you're trying to get two parties to come together on agreeing a price, one for the property they own, one for the property they want to purchase, but needs to do a lot of work to it. And that isn't a 20-minute job. That can take a good couple of weeks to get people to meet together and to see eyes and all that sort of thing. So when I worked in, say, more the 3-bed semi-market, that was a lot easier to put those deals together, and it was a lot easier to manage the clients and the buyers and all sorts. But when you start getting a bit more expensive, it tends to get a bit more complicated, typically, is what I found so far.
That leads on to a really interesting question that is sort of, negotiation, okay? I think a lot of people think that negotiation is this like 5-step strategy to negotiate a deal kind of thing. Like there's this technique, there's that technique, there's that technique. I haven't really negotiated many deals, but any negotiations that I come into, it's more of a conversation, correct? Yeah. So if you were trying to be a good negotiator, what would you what would you
do you mean as me as an agent, or
so if you're trying to put a deal together, and say you've got two really annoying clients that are just trying to get the best of themselves, right, which is fine, but obviously with a deal we want everybody to be winning. So how would you approach it? Johnny's trying to sell his house, but he needs like 50 grand of work, and then Belinda's trying to buy his house, but she wants 150 grand off for the 50 grand work. How would you come to some sort of as Johnny and Belinda would know, it's complicated to get these two. No, I'm joking. Realistically, you need to look at the reasons why someone wants to buy something. So why did they pick this property in particular? What is it about it that they want to go and purchase? And what then is the outcome of buying it? So if somebody's buying it for a development reason, it's pretty clear cut actually. Like I want to buy this to create this, to get this out of it. Fine. We know the parameters of what we need to work in to get that deal done. When someone's buying it for themselves to live in, it's obviously a lot more emotional. So, which sometimes can be easier to deal with, because if it's a home for someone to live in, that can be slightly easier to get them to see it from an emotional point of view. The hardest thing to do with some buyers at times is when it is an emotional purchase, but they look at it from a business mindset.
Like, that's the hardest one sometimes, is you've got to try and switch their mindset to be like, look, you're not flipping this house, you're not renting it out, you're going to live here.
Because you think you've got these business owners or maybe entrepreneurs or even property developers that are trying to buy something, and they're always trying to get the best deal, because it's hard to flip out of that.
And then from a seller's point of view, it's sort of maybe getting to the outcome of the reason why they were selling in the first place and what their goals are in order to sell, and what that creates for them to move on to in the next opportunity. So a lot of it is sometimes getting people to open their eyes a little bit and look at the perspective of the situation from a different angle. So say, for example, you've got a house on at £500,000 and the buyer wants to pay, I don't know, $480 for the property. First off, before you've even got to the point of negotiation, how have you got to that offer in the first place? Like, how many viewings did you have? Did you have any other offers? You know, what was the feedback from the process selling that property? Because if you're the first week, 2 weeks into marketing and someone offers 20 grand under asking price, well, why? Like, you know, what's the reason why you've managed to get that offer in the first place? So actually there's some of it where it comes down to what the agent is able to do to present the right offer through in the first place. Does that sort of make sense? Like, in that.
So do you think that there could be, so you've got two, let's go for the 20 grand under offer, under asking.
Yeah.
So in my eyes, there's two issues here. That person's either spotted something you guys haven't, or they're just being cheeky.
Yeah.
So how do you come to the point of deciding what that is, and then presenting it to the...
Yeah. So a lot of it, you have to understand what your marketplace is. So if you've got a property on the market for X price and someone's offering Y price for it, how have they come to that conclusion themselves? And actually, you need to know your comps, and you need to know the properties around you to know that actually the price that you're listing for is the right price.
Yeah.
If you've been a good agent though, and maybe the price is a little bit high that you've listed for, the person selling it needs to be on the same page of what you are, that you've maybe tried it a bit higher than what the market could demand, and and then if an offer, setting those boundaries out with somebody in the first instance. So it's understanding the marketplace of why someone has offered that price in the first place, and knowing what the comps are around to it. There's a vast majority of people that will just come in cheeky for a first offer, because that's just how they are as human beings, and they want to test the market out. It's almost, I call it like sonar. Like, they send something out and see what comes back in. Like, if they go 480 and the owner comes back and goes, oh no, I want 490, job done. Like, they know where that price needs to be.
Yeah.
But then there's a legality thing in it, that every offer that comes in, we have to tell the clients. So if somebody comes in with a lowball offer, I have an obligation to put it forward to the owner, regardless of how low that offer is on a property.
Okay.
But that's also where you've got to advise people at times as well, that if somebody, you get people that come in really cheeky offers on houses, and you're like, you're going to get to a point where you're going to really piss that owner off. If you come in too low, they're just going to say, they're just going to tell you to piss off. They're not going to want to do business with you because you come in so low. So you've got to...
Yeah, so even if you get to the right offer, they might even still say no.
I've had that happen before.
Yeah.
Where owners have gone, no, I don't want to sell to this person because of how they've approached the transaction.
I did that with my first house.
Why does that not surprise me?
In terms, I was the seller. So that's a funny story, and I mean, there's no hard feelings at all whatsoever. But I got to a point where stuff happened, and partly probably my fault, but also partly the buyer's fault, and they were getting a really good deal, and I just said, "Sorry, you're not buying it." And that's it. Like, I'm not selling it anymore. You're not having it. They're like, "What do I need to pay you?" I'm like, "It's not about money."
Why was that though?
Yeah, why? What's going on?
So I agreed to sell my house to somebody off market again. So I cut the agent both ends, Tom. Right. So I bought it off market and I actually sold it off market.
Do you know the annoying thing is? I valued that house in Heytesbury. Like, joking aside of this. Yeah. Connor got me round there when it was a building site, and I looked at it for you. It took me an hour to drive to that fucking house.
You did, Tom.
I'll send you an invoice for it, mate.
I'm really sorry. So going to basically the long and short story was during COVID, I was a bit worried about what I was going to be getting for this house. So I agreed a price of 310,000, which was cheap.
Very.
Right? And it was still good money in it, real good money. So this was done, dusted. There was no money exchange, nothing like that. So things that happened. This was a building site, mine. This was still a building site, and there was things that I had to do to get the job done, and there was things that she needed to do to make herself satisfied with what I was doing was correct. I basically said to her, look, you're going to pay a bit more, but let's get a surveyor in. Now, so we can see the drains, he can see everything, he can see that everything that I've done is correct. Like, that's a real good offer. She rang him, he said, oh, we only really come in at the end. Okay, fair enough. Gets to the end, all of the stuff that I said we needed to see, he asked for. There was no way that I could tell him or show him what I'd done. So that was holding my sale up, okay?
Right.
At that time, I was trying to buy this house, and the only way that I could buy this house was to refinance that and buy this house, but it had to be let to buy. Have you heard of those? So it had to be in conjunction with buying another property. I couldn't just refinance and go and find somewhere else. So I was under time pressure. I had like 2 weeks, and I basically said to her, like, you can buy this house, but it needs to be within the next like week or so. You need to like get this thing through. And she was like, bloody, but I didn't reply, and I just said, that's it, you're not having it. Like, she had her furniture in and everything. So I had to meet around there. Like, it's not funny. It's like, really, I feel bad. But like, I had to do what I had to do.
It's a pretty savage example, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a savage example, and I'm real sorry if she sees this. Like, we had a real good relationship.
This is why you should always use an agent.
This is probably why you should always use an agent.
To be in the middle of these situations.
Yeah, so I was there on like a Saturday morning with the removals van, and she was moving her bed out and stuff, and I was thinking this could have been easily avoided, like, just buy the house, 310, it's worth 350. You got like just buy it. It's simple. Just get the solicitors going, and like I just wanted it done. But no. And then she was like, oh, it's money, isn't it? And I said, it's not money. She's like, how much do you want for it? I was like, it's not money. I'm keeping this now. Like, this is mine. So yeah, it was one of those sort of things. It was bad. But so going back to the negotiation thing, you're basically saying,
well, I guess there probably is I don't actually know what the proper definition of a negotiation is, but it is, the loose form around it is that where both parties are satisfied with the end result, isn't it? I.e., that's what a negotiation is. Yeah. So when you have one party that feels put out of place because of how the negotiation's gone, typically that's when something falls out of bed because of it. Like, if a buyer feels they're paying too much money for it, they get buyer's remorse, and then a phrase that came out during COVID, and it has been around before, but it came out specifically around COVID a lot more, was gesundering, where people were paying, silly money for properties and then were lowering their offer before exchange of contracts because they'd had to offer so much money to secure a house.
So I've seen that as like a technique of buying stuff. So I've not done it myself. I'm not that much of a prick. Right. So you can do stuff like that. So if you think you've got you're so far down the offer, you accepted the offer. Some people do this. This is not a good technique.
No, it isn't.
But they will lower their price, like you just said.
Yeah.
And then in hopes that the seller is just like, look, I've gone through it, let's just do it. And do you find that they do?
No.
They don't.
So, because I advise them not to.
Okay.
So, this is where, normally to get to that point in particular, we've typically had a lot of traction on that house in the first instance, and they wouldn't have been the only offer. To pay silly money over for a property, you're not the only offer on the table.
No.
So, it's a really easy conversation to say, that's absolutely fine if you want to lower your offer.
Yeah.
But I've got 8 other people I'm going to call to get round to come and see this house. So, the call's yours, mate. Do you want to pull out and lose money on your solicitors, or do you want to
just carry on?
Do you want to be sensible and just carry on buying the house for the price that we'd agreed in the first place? But I've also had it where the owners have tried to up their offer.
Oh, really?
Like, during the sale. Yeah, I had this a lot. Again, during, so where, say I'm going back to, Q4 of 2020, after we finished lockdown, where loads of houses came on the market, and then it sort of went ballistic in sort of Q1 2021. I had sellers that had agreed offers that then went back and said, I want more money for my house now. That the market's gone up, I want more money. So I'm like, that's the first instance I've had to manage vendors to be like, no, you've agreed a price.
Yeah.
Unless you want to go back to the market, you can't just go back to someone and ask for 20 grand more because you think you'd get it. It's all subjective. But that's, again, where the media and everything necessarily didn't help in those situations. So yeah, gesundering or gazumping, it can happen both ends with stuff.
It's really interesting.
Yeah, it's it's really annoying.
It's very annoying.
Some weird ideas.
No, I am not like. I would not do that. I would not.
Like a fair negotiation is where the seller is happy with the price that they're receiving, the buyer's happy with the property they're buying, and they feel that it's a fair price they're getting it for. Whether they paid over asking price or not, they think it's a fair offer what they're getting in their house for.
Yeah.
That's the dream negotiation. But then part of the agent's job is to manage the expectations of both the seller and the buyer, and then nurture that deal through to get it through to completion. Just because you've agreed an offer, that's not a sale. A sale is once that house has exchanged contracts and completed, and that logs as a proper deal. Anyone can get an offer accepted.
So I think so. With negotiation, I think what you're saying. Let's paint a picture.
Yeah.
What you've got is a Picasso, right? Right. Okay. You've got a Picasso.
Yeah.
And you've got a sheet in front of the Picasso.
Right.
You've got two people looking at the Picasso painting with two little cuts out of the sheet. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
They're only seeing a part of the Picasso.
Right.
You basically come in and take the whole sheet off.
Yeah.
Reveal the whole Picasso to them. Yeah.
Yeah.
They see the whole picture. Now, do you ever go in and edit the Picasso with your paintbrush and sort of manipulate the...
Oh,
do you ever manipulate the situation?
Well, all I'm going to say is the person that pays me is the person that sells a house. That's my client. Anyway, moving on.
Did you like the analogy? Is that an analogy?
I have no idea. I have no idea whether I need to start now painting Picassos at work. I'm not sure if that.
I felt like I'd taken mushrooms or something in the gym. And I was like, whoa, man.
Tom, we're trying to negotiate on a house deal. Yeah, but I'm painting. Bear with me.
Trust me. Wait till you see this.
I'm manipulating Picasso. Yeah.
But there's a sense between. There are ways that you can manipulate people.
I think manipulate is a really strong word, and I think that it makes it sound as if like I'm really deceptive, and agents are like. I think
the actual word is only perception. I think it's the way people perceive it. Like manipulation could be like just moving that coffee cup from there to there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's ultimately there are tricks and tools that we use, to, because we work for the deal. At the end of the day, we work to make sure that deal gets done. So there are things that we will do and we will say, not to harm anybody, not to financially loss anybody, but we're not good negotiators, we're not good salespeople unless we can make sure that deal works and we put it all together. It could just be that
the house is not showcased well enough. It could be that you've got to manipulate how the house is presented. In terms of maybe do this work, do that work to get a little bit more, for the house.
Yeah.
There's certain things that you could do like that, I suppose. But in terms of the actual techniques, Tom.
But it's also like you could class that doing an open day is manipulating, because if you've got 10 people turning up to go and view a house, and as you turn up to do a viewing, one person leaves, one person walks in, that could be manipulating a situation that it builds tension amongst buyers. Now, is it manipulating? No, you're streamlining your diary and the owner's diary to get people in to come and view a house. But you could perceive that as being... There's lots of things you could perceive as manipulating. I don't really like the word manipulating, though.
Yeah,
personally.
It's low. So how illegal, is it to have an open day?
Oh, there's nothing illegal about having an open day.
Wait.
All right,
to have an open day, but then have live offers.
Have what?
Live offers. So you've got a group of people walking around the house, and you say, right, in 10 minutes we're going in the front room, and you're going to offer.
No. Well, no.
How illegal is that?
No. So we don't do things like that. In Australia, they do.
Okay. Is it illegal?
I don't know if it is. I just don't think it's best practice, because that is like an auction, which we're not then auctioneers. I don't know if I'm not really qualified to answer this question, but I don't know if it's illegal. I just know it's not best practice, and that we would never do anything because again, we've got to check the finances, we've got to do our due diligence, and there's lots of other things around it.
What about if you qualify everybody before they come to the open day?
I don't know why you're asking this question.
So I feel like it's a huge gap in the market. I feel like you could sell houses like that.
In Australia, they do that. Like they'll go and do an open day, and they'll stand in the street and they'll do an auction. Like but in an Australian accent. Yeah.
It's just like this. Hibbity, hibbity. All right, mate. That's what it is, man.
Oh crikey, the house is yours. That was so bad. That was so bad. But no, we don't do things like that in England or in the UK. No.
Okay. Maybe we should.
Maybe we shouldn't.
I wanted to ask Tom is, have you ever refused to list somebody's property?
Yes, many of the time.
Okay.
The worst one is the owner was a convicted paedophile who was selling the property. So naturally, that was a straight red flag, straight no for me. Didn't want to get involved in anything to do with that. Didn't want to represent anybody that was in, that was convicted of something like that. It's commission's commission, but that's a massive no.
Morally, it's a no.
Oh, it's disgusting. No, I mean, you want to bury someone like that. That's
100%.
That's your first instinct. But on a slightly lighter note than that, there's sellers that invite me around to properties that I just know that I'm not necessarily going to be the best person to represent them. There's some clients that are immediately hard work to deal with in how they are to me on that initial meeting, and I don't want to drain the resources of my team and of myself to have to deal with someone who's just going to be extremely hard work going all the way through. Not every client is easy to deal with, not every client is hard to deal with, but if I can spot those red flags from that initial meeting, then that I will sort of put a stop to it. I won't be rude to the person. I won't. They'll never know that I'm doing it, but I will make that judgment pretty quick. I mean, when I've been involved in nearly 800 property transactions, I can read someone pretty well on that first meeting as to whether they're going to cause me grief or not during the transaction. And at the moment, you're going to typically be with someone for up to 6 months, even longer. And if someone's going to be hard work, I know there's better places I can put my resources into.
What do you do to sort of end that relationship?
So if there's someone that's let me just first off by caveat saying that the majority of my clients are fantastic to deal with, and I love all of you, so thank you. There are some though that I will quote a really high fee. Because I'm sat on the fence of going, I will work with you, but it needs to be worth my while to put myself and the team through dealing with you as an individual. And there are other times though I have just said, point back to somebody, where someone has really disagreed with everything that I've said, but then has come back and said, we want to use you. I will just turn around and say, look, I don't think that I'm the right person for you.
It might be better if you call such and such estate agents.
Botch it and leg it, as an example. But just because they want different things that maybe we can't offer, or they're going to be quite demanding, and I deal with a lot on a day-to-day basis as it is. So
also people are a pain in the ass. You don't have to say that, but people are a pain in the ass.
That's your opinion, Connor.
But that's the thing with the property business. It's a property. It's a people business, isn't it?
100%. Yeah, exactly.
It's having skills with people, being able to talk to people, and if that client doesn't have the same respect for you that you do for them, then it's kind of not worth it.
I think the thing to remember is when you're selling or buying property, is it's a business relationship between however many people are involved in that transaction. So we want to try and minimise any friction or hostility that we can, and ultimately we're all working towards the same goal. And it's getting people to understand that at times that we're not against them, the seller's not against them, the buyer's not against them. We're all working towards the same thing. In life, things don't always go the way that we want them to go, but as I always say, you can only control the controllables. Stuff that is out of your control, you can't control it. You just got to write it out. But it's getting that through to some people at times is obviously the tricky bit.
Very difficult. Would you be able to talk about sort of your payment structures and how, like, for yourself, like how I'm leaving this open ended for you, just to give people at home an idea of maybe sort of how it works, how they can earn money becoming an estate agent?
So every company is different of how the payment setup will be, and obviously self-employed models are then going to be completely different from working in the sort of corporate world or for a business in particular. So as a blanket for agency across the UK or in England and Wales, should I say, is how much we charge the seller to sell their property. The company will take the vast majority of that commission, and then we as the individuals that have been involved in the transaction will get a percentage of whatever that fee was that we charged the seller. And different companies will have different percentages and how they'll work and operate, but that's the sort of the majority. Then you've then got third-party payments that you can get from, referring mortgage advisors or solicitors or removal companies or, that sort of product as well. Where you can then pick up some extra commission at the same time.
So are you able to elaborate where you are in terms of that whole not the companies you work for, but where you like what you do on a day-to-day basis and where you sit in that.
Okay, so since I was 21, I have been managing and running offices. So my commission structure's a bit different if you're running the office. So mine is based on the overall performance of how the office does or my team does. When you're working in the team, so like as a sales consultant or a lister or whatever position it is, you'll then get individual commission based on what you do.
Okay.
But saying that though, there are some agencies where it is a pooled commission system where it doesn't matter what that individual does, it's a team effort where everyone gets paid regardless of who sells it or who does the work, etc. Okay. So there's a couple of different models that are out there, but like as someone that runs the business in the office, mine is taken as the overall commission for what happens.
With those two scenarios, what would you say was the most successful outcome?
So I've never worked in a full commission system, so I don't know, and as in like a day-to-day business model of it. Personally, though, as this is my own opinion, as someone who's only worked in individual commission structures up until running a team, I much prefer the individual commission because I think it makes the individuals work harder. It allows them to be more dynamic and be more proactive and be more tenacious in what they do because they're working for their own money. You know, you hear of in pool commission systems where there can be some people that are a little bit lazy and don't pull their weight as much. Again, broad statement. I'm biased towards one system because of how I've always operated and worked. So that's my personal preference.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because the way that people work in terms of jobs is normally like time. It's time based, and I think that most jobs now could actually benefit from that sort of commission stroke. I guess they're on some sort of salary, aren't they?
Yeah. So you get a basic salary. Again, depending which company you work for, and then you then get commission then on the side of it. But do you know how many hours typically a property transaction takes? As in, like, how much as an agent we put into it?
No.
So on average, we will put in 110 hours per property transaction.
Okay. So can you give us a breakdown on what that would entail, like paperwork, viewing?
So from the very start of it, you've got going out and doing the listing appointment or the pitch for the property, which could take an hour to 2 hours to go and do and finalise all the strategy and agreements with the owner. Then you've then got collating all the marketing collateral. So getting all the photos, the floor plans, the video tours, getting all the descriptions written up, all the brochures ordered, getting all those ready. You'll then have the viewings that will take place at the property. So if you do open days or if you do individual viewings, sort of as in course of the marketing, then you'll have updates with the owners of how the marketing strategy is going, and that'll be sort of a few hours of going through and doing that. You've then got the sales. Once you've agreed the offer, you've got all the negotiations that get involved in that. And then probably the longest bit of time it takes, unfortunately, at the moment, is then getting that transaction through from having an offer accepted through to completion as part of the sales progression process. That's probably where the chunk of most of our time is spent, is talking to the seller, the buyer, the solicitors, and then other agents that are involved in the chain.
That's always a real long time, but who is holding that part up now? Are we talking solicitors?
Well, I think it does fall on them, but I respect the reasons why it does because of the way that the English system operates in terms of paperwork and systems and processes. There are cases where deals can go through within a week. As long as the buyer and the seller and their solicitors have got everything in order, you can get deals done quickly. Look at new homes, for example. They'll exchange on properties within 28 days, or they'll try to exchange in 28 days. So in terms of you've got to remember what an agent does. An agent's job is to market a house and to find a buyer and then to help that transaction go through. We can't do any of the legal paperwork. No, our job is to communicate. And
the searches can take weeks to come back, can't they?
Months sometimes.
I don't know, why don't they just keep the searches on record? And then you just request it and it's bam.
It's a good question, Connor.
Why was it not?
I think you need to bring other people involved in this to ask them. But we're one of the slowest. I think we have to be one of the slowest countries in the world in terms of buying and selling property.
It could actually be quite a good thing though, because
there are many debates around this at the moment.
It's going to keep prices high, because imagine if you could complete on a property in a day. You could get everything through in a day, and then the turnover of property, you might generate more sort of commissions for yourself.
But that's what impacts typically the fall through rate in this country of transactions, is because of how long the process takes. Chains fall through. You get buyer's remorse. There's issues that can be raised up. Like, there's so many things.
You've got so much time to think, haven't you?
You've got so much time to think. There's so much time that happens in between you offering on a house, going and seeing it, to you moving into it. So much can happen. So if that transaction, weirdly, when you speed up that transaction, the fall through rate drops dramatically because of it. So, but, you know, as me as one small cog in one massive company, I can't impact any of this, but there are many people that are trying to change the system and trying to help speed it up.
Yeah.
And, you know, there are some fantastic solicitors that are out there that do an amazing job. And there are some amazing agents out there that do an amazing job to get this sped up. It's just, you know, there are certain times where their jobs are hindered by how they have to do things and what the processes and systems are in place.
Yeah.
No, it's
Very diplomatic of me, that wasn't it?
No, it was good. It was really good.
I've got a question. So for those new estate agents, what are your advice? Like, they're just getting started.
Okay.
Got any advice and tips for them?
Absolutely. So over the last couple of years, when people have joined, like if you've joined agency since 2020 to now, which is relatively new into the industry, you have seen a market like no other, where a house sells, you know, every couple of minutes because of how fast the market was moving and how volatile it was. And unfortunately, there are lots of agents now that I call our right move receptionists. They have no idea what they actually have to do in terms of selling and marketing properties, because the job has been so easy over the last couple of years. And equally, there's lots of agents that work in agencies that have fallen into that bad habit because of how things have been the last couple of years. So for me, it's all about being proactive. It's all about being dynamic in the way that you structure your days and the ways that you get out most of it. But you can't beat the old school methods of, you have a telephone, you have a database, call some people. Weirdly, if you pick up that phone and you dial some numbers in and you have conversations with people, you will do business. If you email and tap away and you contact people, you will do business. Just by being sat there and putting the kettle on and hoping for the best and then wondering why you're not selling anything.
And manifesting the sale.
Do something. Do something. You know, every action has an opposite reaction. You know, get off your ass and do something. And it isn't rocket science what we do. The people that complicate it are us as individuals. But it is one of the simplest jobs in the world that you can go and do, where you can earn a really good income on the back end of it. But people are just lazy with it and don't want to put the effort in. And that's where the biggest problem is I always say to my teams is, structure your day in the sense of monitor what you do every 15 minutes. And if you can look back over the last, you know, hour of what you've done and look at those 15 minutes and just look at what you've actually achieved, you'd be surprised that how little you actually do to get out of that time period. So when I hear people all the time say, oh, I work really well under pressure. No, you don't. It's just you leave everything until the last minute.
And then there's pressure.
That's not working under pressure. That's just laziness. And then you've gone, oh shit, I need to get that done. Like, there's a difference with it. And it's the whole, you know, all the old sayings of, you know, eat the frog, do the worst thing you have to do at the start of the day. Don't leave it until the end of the day to get it done. Exactly. And just, you know, structure your days a little bit better. Structure when you're going to call your vendors, you're going to call your buyers, you're going to call solicitors, you're going to proactively go and tout for business, and you're going to try and get viewers booked in to go and see houses, and, you know, sort your diaries out a little bit. You know, I've ran through different structures and different systems at different companies under different management. And I now have a system that I put in place in most teams that I go into, which seems to work really well and seems to get the most out of it. But I think that's where a lot of people fail. That's what I came on to earlier, is a lot of it is just basics. It's just processes. You know, any business, whether it's a estate agency or not, you can't function unless your processes are watertight. You know, if they're not watertight, then things are going to fail. You're not going to get the most out of what you need to do. And I'm not reinventing the wheel by saying this. It's pretty basic stuff. But that's where you've come out the last couple of years where the market has been so amazing that all your processes have, you know, gone to shit. You haven't needed them. So I think a lot of people just need to get back to how things were before. And because there's plenty of business to be done out there, it's just finding it.
Getting it done.
Yeah, basically. Exactly.
I got one last question, unless you want to touch on anything else, but from your perspective as an agent, what would you like to see developers or investors do more when they come to you?
Just be honest and transparent. Like that's how a business relationship is formed. Is if somebody comes to me, like the developers I get on with the most will come to me and they'll be really black and white and honest about what they want to achieve, what they want out of a property, how they want to do it, and then that allows me to then put options in front of them to be able to try and find them a good deal at the same time and things as well. Okay. When developers come in with a developer's attitude and that they know all and they're better than you and and all the rest of it, like it just creates an awkward atmosphere to start with. Just come in and be like,
just a person.
Just be like, this is what I want. This is how I want to do it. This is can you help me? And that's it. I think the problem, as you said earlier, is there's so many developers that view agents as being snakes and dodgy and all sorts, and that's where they've had bad experiences with other agents before. But not every agent is like that. And it equally is the same as agents that view developers and investors like that as well. It's, we're all working towards the same goal and the same things.
Yeah.
But both of us need to understand what the other person wants, and then I can be better suited to help that person as well.
Okay. Is there anything else like you want to touch on, or are you?
No, I think I'm good, boys. Just, thank you very much for having me on.
That's right.
Good luck.
Well, thanks for coming.
Yeah, good luck with the journey and stuff. It's awesome. So, thank you.
Do you want to sort of say social medias and stuff?
Yeah. So, for the all 4 subscribers that they have at the moment, including 3 of them are here.
And the other one's my cat.
It's a main account.
Exactly. If anyone wants to keep up to date with, property, most of my stuff that I do is luxury and, 7 figures plus, that sort of thing. Then drop me a follow at Tom Howell Property on Instagram, and then Tom Howell Real Estate on TikTok, as well. So thank you.
We'll link that in the video. But, thanks for watching, guys.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.